I am an interventional cardiologist, and it was some years ago that I was on call for a prestigious hospital located in the Pacific Northwest. The facility was in an area renowned for its wholesome, delicious, and local cuisine. It was a fact that excited me because I am also a professional chef. However, at 2 a.m., I get a phone call from the emergency room physician.
Hey, Mike, got a young lady down here with classic chest pain. Electrocardiogram's a little abnormal. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind coming down and take a look at it, because she's only 24 years old, and it's probably nothing. But it just seems a little bit odd.
And yes, all ER doctors actually sound like that at 2 a.m. So the next morning, as I'm making rounds, I stop by her room to chat. At 24 years old, she'd actually had a heart attack, received a stent, and would be on medications and suffer the consequences of that for the rest of her life. We started to talk about her risk factors and the decisions she had made. She was bright, pleasant, and perceptive. She did not smoke, she did not do drugs, and she did not have a significant family history. However, she was morbidly obese and just learned that she had type 2 diabetes. You know, people more than twice her age have trouble processing the reality of a heart attack and coming face to face with their own mortality. I could see her struggle to keep composure. Despite that, she broke down and cried several times. We spoke for about 45 minutes regarding her diet. She wanted to eat better and tried to eat better, but it was all so confusing. Since in her mind there was no clear consensus on how or what to eat, she confessed that she did the easiest thing possible, something a lot of us probably do. She ate fast food, went to drive-thrus, and snacked at home on things pre-prepared because it's easy and cheap. As we chat, her lunch arrives hidden under a tired plastic cover. There were no accompanying smells of deliciousness. And I wondered, just what did the hospital send in? What kind of message, what kind of instruction, what kind of example were we in the medical profession going to impress upon her? After all, when she leaves the hospital, what she will remember is that after her heart attack, this is what the experts gave her to eat. Deli turkey and day-glow orange cheese-like food substance on white bread. Piled on the plate next to the sandwich were a bunch of condiments and little squeeze packets. The infamous green hospital Jell-O was actually on her tray. The final component was a pseudo salad. It consisted of iceberg lettuce and cherry tomatoes that had clearly never seen a ray of sunshine. They were so hard you could have played ping pong with them. This was by obvious design to be topped off with a dressing which consisted of ultra-processed, omega-6 rich vegetable oil loaded with artificial flavors, preservatives, and other peculiar bits. As I looked at her hospital tray, I thought to myself, my God, what have we done? As a cardiologist, I work to save lives. As a professional chef, I live to craft real delicious food. There is neither food nor life on this plate. Not in that turkey sandwich, not in those squeeze packets, not in that pseudo salad, and most certainly not in that alien green Jell-O. And then, in one of those rare moments where an entire memory, an entire experience downloads with the speed of thought, I remembered my own turkey sandwich. Something my mother made for me many, many decades ago when I was just a wee lad. It was nothing fancy, but it was real and authentic food made with love. It was leftover turkey breast from dinner earlier in the week. She would place that between 2 slices of artisanal sourdough we bought at the local bakery. She topped that with some Dijon mustard and brie, or perhaps cheddar cheese imported by the local deli. There were always some vegetables, either on the sandwich or on the side as a small salad. The exact ingredients would vary by whatever she happened to pick up that was in season at the equivalent of what today would be a roadside farmer's market. Instead of the ubiquitous green Jell-O, there was always a kosher dill on the plate. My turkey sandwich was, at the time, an ordinary meal. And I wondered how, in the decades since I had enjoyed my commonplace lunch, did we arrive at the plate before me? I asked myself again, what have we done? What was ordinary and authentic and delicious and nurturing is no longer real. Our food has become a pale, hungry ghost of its former glory. In the time since I enjoyed my ordinary meal, Western medicine has turned its attention with laser-like intensity and singularity of purpose to calories and nutrient composition at the exclusion of all else, choosing to concentrate on only about 150 of the over 26,000, or roughly 0.5% of all the components found in real food. Such a nutrient-centric focus is relevant and beneficial when treating a deficiency state like scurvy, but much less helpful when dealing with chronic disability and disease, which are far and away the major sources of morbidity and mortality worldwide. We have ignored, at our own peril, the food matrix. The matrix is the way nature packages our food. It is the bud that protects the bloom. It is the shell that holds the delicate nutrients and life-giving elements until we crack the egg and make the omelet. It is a web of incredible complexity and gentle synergy that functions in how nature bundles our food. At the same time we destroyed that natural food matrix, we rebuilt it with cheap ingredients, chemical additives, preservatives, added fats and sugars to create profitable products on an industrial scale. We fundamentally changed the foods that we have consumed since the dawn of humankind into something that people and the bacteria in their gut that is so essential for health have never, ever eaten before. Unable or unwilling to discern between ultra-processed offshoots and real food, we followed nutrient-centric guidelines and recommendations. We created our own Nutrilogic, or should I say Nutri-illogic, because when we continue to use largely irrelevant food categories like percent carbs, low fat, red meat, or cheese, we rationalize that a deli sandwich on commercial white bread rife with added sugars, preservatives, and additives is a wholesome choice, simply because it is not the dreaded hamburger. We think that a slice of ultra-processed deli turkey is, well, turkey. And that is a smart choice to avoid red meat at any cost. We suppose condiments are healthy simply because the label says fat. We applaud a Jell-O that has 0 calories, assuming that's good, even if it is achieved using artificial colors, sweeteners, and flavors. Well, at least the salad has so-called vegetables. Of course, to be submerged in a drowning pool of ultra-processed dressing. And that is why we put that false food on that hospital tray. This so-called healthful meal is actually an ultra-processed NOVA classification group 4 nightmare. NOVA was developed as a new way to analyze and categorize food. It's been adopted by the United Nations and many countries worldwide, and is currently the global gold standard used in research studies. NOVA, unlike many nutrient-centric and obsolete classification systems, views food from a different perspective. That is the degree of processing. Within the NOVA classification, there are 4 groups. NOVA Group 1, raw and unprocessed foods, like raw milk. NOVA Group 2, minimally processed foods and culinary ingredients, like butter. NOVA Group 3, processed foods, like a classic from-scratch sandwich. And then there is NOVA Group 4, ultra-processed foods. These ultra-processed foods are completely different beasts altogether. Never in the history of the human species have we consumed so many products not found in the natural world. For the purposes of discussion today, and in general, we need only focus on a binary choice. Is it a NOVA Group 4 ultra-processed food or not? When we apply the lens of culinary medicine and NOVA classification to separate the ultra-processed from the non-ultra-processed, we view food in a whole new way. A sandwich is no longer simply a sandwich. And when a sandwich is no longer a sandwich, when a pizza is no longer a pizza, and when a burger is no longer a burger, we must make a shift. Ultra-processed foods are unique. There are several defining characteristics that distinguish ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. The first is that the natural food matrix is substantially degraded or destroyed. The second is that reassembling that matrix in the production of ultra-processed foods, there are added compounds not found in nature and of rare culinary use. These additives and preservatives are known as markers of ultra-processing, or MUPs. An additional characteristic of ultra-processed foods is that they often have excessive amounts of undesirable sugars, salt, and fat added to their preparation. This threesome is often added to ultra-processed foods in an effort to increase their bliss point. The bliss point is a term used to describe the combinations of sugar, salt, and fat that deliver maximum pleasure before food is perceived as unpleasant. The exact ratios may vary depending upon the type of food. For example, we may prefer a potato chip to be saltier and a donut to be sweeter. Ultra-processed foods are manipulated to achieve their maximum bliss point, and thus their characteristic hyperpalatability through the additions of maximum levels of sugars, salt, and fat. All three of these food components, sugar, salt, and fat, act via dopamine in the reward center of our brain in a way similar to opiate medications. The result is that authentic and wholesome foods, things like fruits and vegetables, get displaced from our tables. Instead of real food, we end up eating MUPs made from low-cost industrial components like carboxymethylcellulose or CMC. CMC, also called cellulose gum, along with xanthan gum, are the most commonly used emulsifying additives in ultra-processed food. CMC is not a natural product. It is made from the waste products of cotton and wood manufacture, particularly wood chips. And that's not good eats, unless you're a beaver. Despite a lack of extensive safety testing, CMC was approved in the 1960s for use in foods based on the grass, generally recognized as safe legislation, originally developed in the 1950s. Current research shows that CMC decimates our native gut bacteria and is associated with developing irritable bowel syndrome and even inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's disease. It is a pattern associated with many other chronic disabilities and diseases. The negative effects of MUPs and UPFs are clear. Consumption of ultra-processed food correlates with an increased risk of developing illnesses like obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even an increased risk of early mortality. From age 5 onwards, the average American's diet consists of almost 70% ultra-processed food. Obviously, food is needed for health and life, but there is no need to consume ultra-processed foods outside of convenience. So how do we reframe our relationship between our health and our food? Culinary medicine is born from this quantum change in our perspective regarding what we eat and who we are. Culinary medicine, as I define and teach it at the University of Montana, is the multidisciplinary application of evidence-based decision-making in the selection of ingredients and techniques used in preparing foodstuffs with the goal of achieving and maintaining health and wellness through an optimized food experience. The goal of culinary medicine is to empower the individual to positively reconnect, reestablish, and reforge their relationship to their food experience. Because this food experience, from the moment we bond with our mothers over breast or bottle, forms a cornerstone for all the other relationships in our lives. And as we have learned from studies like the Blue Zones Project and the Harvard Happiness Studies, it is these relationships, the power of these relationships in our lives that impact our health, wellness, and longevity, and happiness. So how do we begin? The answer is not complicated. It all starts with what we eat. And what we need to eat are simply real foods. And ultra-processed foods are not real foods. Let me repeat that. Ultra-processed foods are not real foods. They are either fabricated constructions or reassembled structures made from degraded and destroyed real foods that are stitched back together like Frankenstein's monster. We need to move from largely traditional but irrelevant classifications to a simpler view of our current reality. Is it ultra-processed or not? When we dine out, we can simply look at where the ingredients come from. Is this a fast food 40-ingredient chicken nugget joint? Or does the menu brag about where the fresh ingredients come from? We can craft more of our meals at home. We can make more healthful meals ourselves because we can control not only what goes into the meal, but what stays out. We can do this in a timely fashion by using techniques like ferments and marinades to do the work for us. We can do this economically by using all parts of the ingredients. Currently, about 30 to 50% of the food purchased by the average US household winds up in a landfill. We can use the 85% rule for better health. Keep it to 5 to stay alive, because if there are more than 5 ingredients in the ingredient list, then about 85% of the time, it's ultra-processed. We avoid the 6 danger zones. Roughly 85% or more of the foods found in these 6 grocery store categories are ultra-processed. Salted meats, pre-prepared meals, flavored yogurts and white cheeses, energy and gourmet bars, breakfast cereals, and beyond belief and impossible to digest, vegetarian dishes. And finally, we can strive to make our diet at least 85% minimally processed. Everywhere we look around the globe in terms of diet and health, there are a few simple and clear truths. Societies that stuff their gob with the standard American diet, or SAD, experience dizzying rates of chronic disability and disease. Everywhere we see traditional cuisines based on real foods, we see healthier populations. From the Inuit and Nordic diets to the Okinawan and Costa Rican populations to the French diet, which embraces butter, cheese, cream, and wine. A growing body of scientific evidence has brought us to this precipice where a sandwich is no longer a sandwich. The majority of the ingredients we put in a sandwich today are not to be found anywhere in the natural world. They exist only in fast food outlets, convenience and grocery store shelves, and unfortunately, hospital trays. Today, we find ourselves at a place where the knowledge about food and health from over the last half century completely breaks down. We move forward and evolve by embracing a new perspective. We apply the principles of culinary medicine. We decrease our consumption of ultra-processed, modern, industrial ingredients, and return to our roots through sourcing sustainably raised, real, and wholesome foods. What if we all took a seat at the culinary medicine table? It'd be a far richer feast than we ever imagined. Thank you for your attention.